today was asked for my profession. On the drop-down menu, there wasn't an option for still dreams of being a rock god. But there was one for journalist, and there was one for broadcaster. And it got me thinking, what am I? Am I a journalist? Broadcaster? I think the answer, at least to me, is obvious. First and foremost, I'm a live broadcaster. I work for the BBC's national radio stations, and I help out on TV when I have to. It'll never catch on. For me, nailing the story, getting to the people at the centre of it, filming it so beautifully the pictures melt in front of you, is not part of my job. It's part of my job perhaps, but success, as far as my bosses are concerned, is when I'm live on air and broadcasting. Mojo for me is all about live. You can have the world's greatest story, but if you're shouting it from the inside of a lead-lined box or using the Windows phone, nobody can hear you. So I'm going to concentrate on streaming. It's funny to see so much excitement about streaming because broadcasters have actually been using it for years. The clue is in the name of my radio station, Radio 5 Live. Most of my broadcasts have been done on streaming for the last 6 years or so, and it's now really simple for us to broadcast by streaming live on TV as well.
Let's go live back to Calais. Nick Garnett is there, our reporter. Nick, good morning to you. I know you've been there all morning. Just describe...
Just going to pause that for a second. We got video on that.
Was it at night?
It wasn't at night. I must say, I get really...
let's go live back to Calais. Nick Garnett is there, our reporter. Nick, good morning to you. I know you've been there all morning. Just describe to us what you've seen.
There's a delay. There are hundreds and hundreds of lorries parked up on the roads around Calais this morning. Now, I get very jealous of seeing some of the beautiful rigs that exist today. I've been looking out in the exhibition hall. But I can't stop thinking that some of them are so complicated that it's stretching things to call them mobile. Here is mine. One single 3G SIM card, a pair of Apple earphones, a splitter from eBay which cost £3, and a £40 personal mic bought off Amazon. Now 1 year ago today, exactly today, and exactly nearly at this time, I was in Nepal, and I was live on Periscope. I'm about to show you my very first Periscope. The app had been launched, it had been 3 weeks since it had been launched when I was there. I was in a village near the Chinese border, 4 days after the earthquake happened. Every house was wrecked. You couldn't walk down the street because there wasn't a street, it was just rubble. And underneath that rubble were dead people, dozens of them. There was no water, no power, nobody had managed to actually get through to help the villagers in any way at all. Now there are very, very few times in our lives when you can think that maybe something that you did some good. But when I returned to Nepal later in 2015, 6 months afterwards, I found our reports had had a dramatic effect on the village. When the earthquake struck in Nepal in April 2015, this village was one of the worst hit. 98% of the houses were either damaged or completely wrecked. It was a terrible scene to witness. And when I came here, the strangest thing was that there was a 3G signal on my phone.
Right, so hoping this is broadcasting. This is Nick Garnett from BBC Radio 5 Live. And I'm just going to show you an image of just how much devastation there is in this village as I'll pan around. It's absolutely wrecked. Now the locals here tell me they haven't had any aid through. People are asking me on Twitter why I'm able to broadcast this. For some reason, I don't know why, the 3G network around here is very strong. Anyway, I'm going to leave it now because I need to keep the battery.
After BBC came here, the Thailand people came here and started to give the treatment. And after the news, people started come here and they give the house to rebuild their houses. They give medicines, they give food.
If you see the village was totally destroyed, charities may be helped, but the government is never helped. They will never see our village. Only news they will see here, but the government never help.
The reason why the Periscope was so shaky was because I was shaking. Because what I was seeing, I was revealing as I saw it for the very first time. So it wasn't me doing a very carefully orchestrated walk and talk and doing what reporters always do. I was seeing it and my arms were shaking. So was it down, that result, the Thai army coming, was it down to my Periscope? Had the Thai army been secretly following me on Twitter, keen to know what the North of England reporter for BBC Radio 5 Live was up to, and had spotted my scope on their timelines? I'd love that to be true, but it's highly unlikely. With me in the village was one of my colleagues, BBC reporter Richard Galpin. Now, while I was doing my live radio and Periscope, he was busy filming the same scenes. His piece was on the 10 o'clock news that night. Now, my Periscope was watched by 151 people. Richard's piece on the 10 o'clock news that night was watched by 6 million people. 6 million people on the night, and hundreds of thousands more who watched it and continue to watch it on the BBC News website, which acts as an archive of most pieces that go on news bulletins. So 151 versus 6 million. Admittedly, it got 19,000 replays, but if that's what you're after, then you get an awful lot more hits if you put it on YouTube. So, is streaming on Periscope or Facebook just about numbers? That is a really interesting one. You'll hear people say that it's not. It's about the experience. It's about engagement. It's about the quality of viewing. That in a fragmented world where we have so many platforms around us, that it's really up to us to post on as many different platforms as we possibly can before the news story is utterly, totally out of date because we're still trying to do different platforms all the time. To which I'd say to those people that they're wrong. It is all about the numbers. And just in case you think that was all down to Periscope just being 3 weeks old, this Tuesday I broadcast the findings of the Hillsborough inquests live on the radio. The results of the inquests into the deaths of 96 football fans was a massive story in the UK. The families of those who were killed had fought for 27 years for a fair hearing. And after a 2-year-long court case, I was broadcasting on the radio and Periscope at the same time, as the results were fed live to me on Google Docs. Now, as soon as they started typing in the court, it appeared on my screen and I broadcast it out. A grand total of 357 people watched it. And I'm sorry, but that's not good enough. So why isn't streaming pulling in the viewers by the millions, with a worldwide audience instead of one just based in the UK? Why isn't it wiping the floor with traditional broadcasters yet? In a nutshell, the reason is it's like going into the British Library, blindfolded and with fingerless mittens on. Your chances of finding anything useful are governed completely by being told what, when and where on the same platform that you'd be watching the actual thing on. This is bad news for Periscope, but there's a bigger problem for Facebook Live because of the levels of investment going on. Over the last couple of years, Facebook has really built their news division. But Facebook doesn't get news. It doesn't seem to know what news actually is. It thinks the method of delivery is more important than the messages that a live is trying to convey. Facebook suggests that to make the largest impression, to get the most viewers, I should give viewers 24 hours notice of when I'm going live. And I should broadcast for as long as possible, because people come to a stream slowly. Now, that raises a lot of questions about its uses for journalists. Let me suggest a story to you. The coroner has just announced, he hasn't, the coroner has just announced Prince's cause of death. According to Facebook, once I start a live, it will take some time before people come to the stream. So according to their logic, I should wait for 10 minutes or so to reveal what Prince died of, because that's when I'll get the most audience. What happened to using your best shots first? What happened to writing a top line? And what happened to breaking news? The idea of me knowing what I'm going to be doing in 24 hours' time from now is a pipe dream, and that's why I love the job. Telling people that I'm going to go live and do a live in 24 hours' time is not news, it's a press release. What's more, even when you do publicise it, you don't get much traction. I did a Facebook Live from the memorial service for the Hillsborough victims the day before yesterday. I pushed it like hell. It was on the BBC News website. 20,000 people tuned in for part of it. Part of it. A maximum at any one time of 7,000 people were on at any one time, for less than 90 seconds average. And just so you don't think it wasn't an important story, it was just a little middling story. My wife, who's also a reporter, wrote a 6,000-word text piece on the BBC News website. It's been read by more than 500,000 people with massive retention figures. People stayed with the story and went all the way through it. But Rob's right when he says the greatest strength of streaming is the conversation. And that changes what we as journalists do in a fundamental way. A few weeks ago, Danny Savage, one of my colleagues, was in Lesbos. He did a Facebook Live using the BBC News Facebook account, and as a side issue, there's all sorts of problems there as well. But this was an amazing conversation with the viewers.
Thank you for joining us wherever you are around the world here on the BBC News Facebook site. Hello from Kurdistan. I know there's people joining us from all over the UK. Sarah's asked a question. Why are the migrants not being stopped before they leave the Turkish mainland? Hello from Indonesia. People joining us there. The question is, how will the EU distinguish the real refugee and economic migrants and the short time and then send them to Turkey? Wendy, hello. How can Greece cope with this as they have their own problems? Ellie, hello. How long can Lesbos and the other islands withstand the onslaught of refugees pouring into a country that is so weak economically?
Now that was a very successful broadcast, 250,000 views, but until I went looking for it, I didn't know it was there. Perhaps there needs to be a listings magazine for Facebook and Periscope. Radio Times. After all, if we follow what Facebook wants, we'd have 24 hours actually to get it printed, wouldn't we, beforehand? Incidentally, in my Facebook Live, where I was answering questions about the worst sporting disaster in British history, where a group of bereaved families had overturned the British establishment and the judicial system in a landmark case that had taken them 27 years to get to this point, the most popular question I was asked was from people who wanted me to say hello to them. Okay, time very quickly just to change tack and talk gadgets. If there's one thing that degrades the whole streaming experience, it's not a poor signal, it's poor sound. Yep. This is the Rode Video Mic Me, nice windshield, shame it's an analog connector on it. It's pretty good as a rifle mic though, and a lot better than the internal one. This one is another microphone I use often. This is the Shure MV88. Very nice sound. It's stereo too, if that's what's important to you. Build quality is good as well. Obviously, the problem with that is that it's no good for Android. And then there are another couple. That is a iRig Mic HD, which is a bit prone to wind noise and rattle on the actual metal on there, but it's quite nice as well. And it's a lightning connector. And that's the iRig Pro as well, which is one that I use an awful lot. In closing, what I'd say is that streaming isn't going to go away. We'll move towards mobile networks that are geared more towards streaming than they are towards the spiky, stuttering performance that we get at the moment. We all know that our phones are the Swiss Army knives of our lives, capable of anything we can imagine now and in the future as well. And of course, Facebook Live and Periscope have a future, but they need to work out if they're really interested in news or if they really are just a way to check what Justin Bieber has done with his hair. Thank you very much indeed.